Welcome to the Shift Your Reality podcast. I'm Kubra, a spiritual artist, intuitive astrologer, and coach. I channel pain things that help you hold space for your emotions, navigate them, and reconnect with your self-worth. Join me on this journey to self-actualization and discover the power within. Hello everyone, welcome to the Shift Your Reality podcast. This is Purwa, your host, and in this brand new season, we have a new guest who will share a lot of valuable information and they will be mind-opening. But first, I would like to welcome him, keithrobsyn, who is an expert on cardiovascular screening and help people at health and well-being subjects. So he will explain it better. I had an interview with, but had a coffee chat with him. He is so resourceful and will share a lot of gems with you. But before, Kate, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. And thanks for the invite. And it's nice to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to have you. So would you like to say a couple of things about yourself so my audience can know more about you?
Yes. Well, I've been self-employed actually since the age of 19 in the areas of wholesale distribution. I spent 10 years in financial services and the last 17 years in the health and wellness industry. So sort of a rounded group of things that I've been involved in. But my passion happens to be the health and wellness. And after learning what I learned 17 years ago, I felt it was up to me to share that information with as many people as possible so they could benefit from it.
Yeah. And what was the most triggering thing that grabbed your attention in this field? Is there a particular story you would like to share?
Well, I was told one day that it's now possible to reverse heart disease. And I was skeptical, but I was also inquisitive. Because when people are told that, they have two choices. They can look into it or dismiss it. I chose to look into it. A lot of people just dismiss it. So in order to prove whether the information was correct or not, I had my cardiovascular system analyzed. Now, at the time, I was 46. My cardiovascular age was that of a 40-year-old. I followed the protocol that I show and teach people nowadays for 90 days. 3 months, and then I had it checked again, and my cardiovascular age had come down to 22 in that period of time. 2 months later, I had it checked again, and my vascular age had come down to that of a teenager. So that was all the proof that I needed. I decided to go and get trained on using a device called a B-Pro, which is a class 2 medical device for doing cardiovascular screenings, and proceeded to do thousands of vascular screenings where we could measure the age of somebody's vascular system starting point and then measure it 90 days later and look at the results of the improvement in their vascular system in that period of time. And we just kept seeing phenomenal results because nobody tells you, especially from the medical or pharmaceutical side of things, that it is possible to do this. And yeah. I felt that needed to be shared.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And as someone who worked in the pharmaceutical industry and as a chemist, I can't agree more with what you say. Like most of the time, you know, in the industries, several industries, people only focus on selling you more and more, doesn't care about how well you are or something else. So it's valuable to spread that kind of information, such as the things you share. Because when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia at age 19, I was told you have to go with it until at the end of your life. So, you know, if I would have believed that, now I would still be in pain and suffering every day with that pain, feeling bad and not enough, not healthy enough. And it's not just health and physical problem, but after a certain point, you start feeling drained emotionally, not just physically. So this is why I am really excited about what we're going to talk next, and can't wait to start to the questions. Are you ready, or you want to add a couple of more things?
I'm always ready.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. So, all right, everyone. Our first question is, how did you get started in the field of health and wellness? Well, you gave the answer for this question, but if you want to add something more, please do. Otherwise, we can go to the second one.
Well, I'll briefly cover one point. Back when I was doing financial services, and if I was setting up a policy for somebody and there was a family history issue in both sides of somebody's family, they generally got a loading on their policy because they were classified as high risk. Mm-hmm. And because both of my parents had died of cancer before the age of 60, it put me in what I thought was a category of being high risk. But you realize over time that you only have that same risk if you have the same diet, if you're under the same stress, if you do the same things as your parents did. But risk is really just about having knowledge on how to avoid such issues. And that's why I got very interested when I was told about reversing heart disease, because more people was dying of heart disease than cancer. But still, I felt I had a lot to learn in that area too, and have done. So that was really one of the deciders to go looking into the health side also.
Okay, thank you. So, Keith, let's go to the second question. And why do you do what you do?
At this point, it really has become a passion. Because when you've dealt with so many different people, so many different health challenges, and watched the transformation of people taking that control for themselves, and you know that you were the catalyst of that happening, and they probably wouldn't have found out what you shared with them unless somebody like me, who had done that research, who was interested enough to share that information, did so with them. And I just have watched so many things happen for so many people. I've educated and supported others to go out and then start sharing and helping other people on top of that. And when you know that you started that ball rolling as well, well then you know that you're doing it for the right reason, and it's a positive thing for humanity.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. Well, what I think about this kind of thing, like when you find your true passion and follow it, in a way, you always make an impact, but yours is already physical and visible in a way. So thank you for doing that. And I would like to try it for myself as well. And I'm going to ask you more after finishing your 3 questions. So our third question is, what were some of the most amazing health transformations you have seen in your process?
Yeah, there's absolutely tons of them, but there's a couple of cases that stick in my mind. One was a lady that I was asked to meet by her dad, who was, you mentioned fibromyalgia earlier, and she had lupus, there's a lot of similarities. And she was in so much pain. When she got home from teaching, her mother had to help her take her coat off. She was in so much pain. She would lie on the couch, she would have a snooze. Her mother would call her when dinner was ready. She'd eat her dinner and she'd go to bed. That was her life. And when I met up with her, she told me all her situation, and I suggested a protocol of what we call the Vital 3 protocol, which is for restoring blood flow throughout the body and then providing the body with massive levels of nutrition, loads of antioxidants, greens. And we did that for a 3-month period, and she was getting nice progress going on. And then we did what we call a microbiome gut reset.
Okay.
Which is for resetting the gut microbiome, because obviously 80% of the immune system is around the gut. And if you have autoimmune issues, it is a good idea to do that. And so we did a gut reset after about the 3-month point, and then continued with microbiome friendly foods for the following 3 months, continuing the Vital 3 protocol as well. But when she started off, when I met her first, she was getting blood tests regularly enough. And her latest blood test was showing her with an inflammation figure in her bloods of, I think it was 17.2. At the end of that 6-month period, her inflammation figure in her bloods was down to 0.6, and she was pain-free. So she got her life back completely. And herself and her boyfriend actually moved to Australia, which they always wanted to do, but she was never well enough to do. That's one case. I remember also I was asked to talk to a young man in the UK who was bedridden with multiple sclerosis. He was diagnosed at 17. They told him he wouldn't see his 25th birthday, they said. And he was already bedridden. I talked to him when he was about 21, I think, 21, 22. And he decided he wanted to try something natural. And we got him set up on the Vital 3 protocol. And if he wanted to move around, he needed a walker. He had no balance. So within 3 months, he was actually able to move from the walker down to 2 crutches. And several months later, down to 1 crutch. Several months later, down to no crutches. And today, that man walks around the finest, 5 to 10,000 steps a day. He's on 0 medications and he's fine. And it's just lovely to watch that progress. And then I remember another case of a lady that she was threatened to have her leg amputated because of a diabetic leg ulcer. And a lot of diabetics have that issue. They have a blood flow problem going down to the extremities, and they end up having to have an amputation. And you've often heard of, oh, so-and-so has diabetes and they had to take the toe off and now the foot's gone and then the leg's gone. So you can solve that problem very easily by restoring the blood flow, making enough nitric oxide, which actually cleans the arterial system and restores the blood flow. And the pictures that I have of that leg where they wanted to amputate it, I don't know whether I showed it to you on the call we were on, but
No.
it was serious now, and you can see why they were going. I mean, a lot of that foot was we were just looking at plain red blood. I mean, it was that open, no skin at all on a lot of the foot. But I have the pictures of the repairing of that foot, that leg, and in 9 weeks, there was fresh skin over the entire wound because the body got the blood flow down there, got the nutrition to repair, and that leg repaired. And not only that, her diabetes massively improved. And I remember we were out in Nigeria in 2018 helping people there, and there was a lady whose mother had a stroke, and she was 5 years in bed from that stroke.
Mm-hmm.
No feeling on one side of her body for a whole 5 years. And then her daughter got hold of the Vital 3 protocol before we got out there at all. And she had started to give it to her mum. So she was building up her nitric oxide levels. She was giving her fabulous nutrition to work with. And the daughter asked, could she speak at the event we were running that day? We didn't know what she was going to say. So she stood up and she told the story about her mum and what had happened for the last 5 years. And she said, every morning, either myself or my brother have to go in and lift her up in the bed. And at night, we have to lie her back down. She says, I went into her this morning, she says, and my mother happened to be sitting on the side of the bed. And she says, I asked her, did my brother get you up this morning? No, she says, I got myself up because I'm getting back the feeling. So by 5 weeks, the level of nitric oxide that she was making was melting the clot that was stuck in her brain. Mm-hmm. And she was getting back that feeling again. And a lot of people would have written that off and say, oh, nothing can be done for that, or nothing. There's so many things they say nothing can be done, but the body can do it. If it has the fuel, if it has the circulation, and somebody holding their hand.
Wow. Totally agree with what you say. And the stories are fascinating. the life-changing stories, basically. And in our first meeting, I told you that in the Unison certification program, I talk about human body chemistry and the importance of nitric oxide and how we can, use it and amplify it to have a better, body health. And what I explain is for healthy people to maintain with their, body health. But if they have major health issues like the ones you shared, and when you were talking about them, I was going from one emotion to another because of this fibromyalgia issue. I think I had it since my childhood, because in my early ages, I wasn't even able to hold a glass in the morning, or wasn't able to tear a paper because my hands were not working when I first woke up. For a couple of hours, I was just, sitting like this with my hands. And my mom took me to several hospitals, doctors, and no one found anything, because obviously back then there were no such thing called fibromyalgia. And once it was figured out, discovered, they diagnosed me with this. And this is a whole and painful process. These people you mentioned, they suffer a lot with physical issues, and not just physical, as we mentioned in the beginning, like emotionally, physically, and every other possible way they suffer. And finding ways for them to feel better is possible, because our body has its own way to heal itself if we can just balance its chemistry. And what you do with this nitric oxide support, let's say, or the Vital 3 protocol and the other protocols you mentioned, which is very important, because our gut is like this second brain, they call, but I call it the opposite way, because I feel things with my guts, I sense things with my guts, and I make decisions by reading the sensation in my gut. So calibrating our body, balancing our body chemistry is vital, in not just for having a better or long life, but loving yourself more, being compassionate with yourself, or seeing who you really are, is only possible when you feel healthy in your own skin. So thank you for all the things you shared. And I have a couple of questions then. So, for example, you mentioned that Vital 3 protocol, and it lasts for 90 days. How do I do it, or how do I contact you? And is there some products you send people, or how does it work? I'm not sure about this. If you can share a little bit more.
The Vital 3 protocol are 3 particular products that work very well together. So the arginine complexer is called Pro-Arginine Plus. And this is the food that the body needs to ramp up nitric oxide production. So when an average person is consuming foods that contain the amino acid arginine, they're only going to make nitric oxide for between 1 and 3 seconds. And then it's gone. But then one person in 2 has natural blockers or inhibitors to nitric oxide production, and they will make less than somebody else. So I've screened people who are in their 30s, but they're coming in with the vascular system of somebody in their 60s. That means they were making a lot less nitric oxide from the get-go, which means they clogged up their arterial system way faster. And then when you clog up the arterial system, you're talking about raised blood pressure, raised cholesterol, because the body is trying to compensate for blood flow having a problem getting through to the far side, and that part of the body screaming, looking for more blood supply, and the brain keeps asking the heart to rise in pressure. So what we're using can actually boost nitric oxide production up to and beyond 36 hours of production instead of 1 to 3 seconds. Now you're very quickly going to reverse the process of plaque building up, because now you're making enough nitric oxide to melt the plaque, clean the arteries, restore the blood flow, taking the pressure off the heart. And I've even seen people who were told they need triple bypass follow our protocol for 3 months at a strong dosage, go back for retesting, and they were told they no longer require a bypass. So that's how effective that can be. And you can also imagine brain function, with the blood flow getting back up there to the brain. So that's part one of the 3-part protocol. Part 2 is a live berry product called Mystify. Over in the US, that's called Mysticast, the same product. But Mystify is loads of live raw fruits and berries, tested down to parts per trillion to make sure there's no traces of herbicides, insecticides, GMOs, and heavy metals. So in other words, it's the purest live raw food you can give your body to work with. And it's a natural anti-inflammatory. It's a natural pain suppressant. It's antiviral. It's antifungal. And from an antioxidant perspective, every 30 mils of that is equivalent to eating 3.5 kilos of raw fruit. You get 7,000 ORAC value in 3.5 kilos of raw fruit. You get 7,000 ORAC value in 30 mils of Mystify. And there's loads of people have inflammation issues. There's loads of people have an immune system that's unbalanced. So you're fueling the body to balance the immune system. And for certain situations where people have maybe a viral issue, I remember helping a guy in Dublin that had hepatitis C, which is a virus attacking the liver. His liver was enlarged and hard, but I got him to drink lots of that stuff. And 2 weeks later, an ultrasound showed his liver was actually back to normal. But it was another 4 weeks before a blood test proved that he didn't any longer have hepatitis C. So that's a very, very powerful food. And then the third part is called Phytolife. It's raw liquid greens. Now, very few people eat enough greens, but they're ultra important to do several things: detox organs, cleanse the blood, correct the pH of the body, where 9 people out of 10 are acidic, and they shouldn't be acidic, they should be slightly alkaline. And when people are acidic, they are inviting acid-based health challenges like chronic pain, arthritis, osteoporosis, acid reflux, and cancer. So it makes perfect sense to keep the body slightly alkaline, and it makes no sense to keep it acidic. So that's where your greens come in. And it's also improving blood quality because, again, we need good quality blood. And I don't know whether you're familiar with the relationship between human hemoglobin and chlorophyll, or are you? Yeah. So they're the same molecule.
Feel free to mention for the audience, please.
So molecularly, if you look at the molecular makeup of human hemoglobin and the molecular makeup of chlorophyll, they're the same molecule, except for the central ion for chlorophyll is magnesium. Central ion for human hemoglobin is iron. But when it goes into the body turns the magnesium ion into an iron ion. So the higher quality live raw greens you get into your system, it is the next best thing to a blood transfusion. So fabulous for improving the blood quality. And then how many people out there have blood issues? And like I've even seen pregnant mums having issues with their iron levels. They get on the V3 and their bloods come perfect. In fact, pregnant mums using the V3, their babies develop at 123% of normal. What else are you going to do? Only fuel your body really well when you're trying to fuel 2 bodies instead of 1. But so that's the Vital 3 protocol. But I think it's ultra important that somebody holds the hand of the person that wants to take control of their health, because I know I have 17 years experience using this and helping people. So there's very little I haven't come across at this point. So to be able to guide people on, okay, I remember a situation with that same condition, or this is what happened. This is the way we should go. This is the level we should sort of go with. So I do the support and the advice along the way, education and support, if you like. And the people will deal directly with the manufacturer, but they'll work through my replicated site with the manufacturer. So I get something back from the manufacturer, but I don't charge people anything to share information or to support them. And that's the way that I work.
Sounds wonderful. And thank you, Keith. It has been quite helpful for me, and I'm sure my audience will love it. And would you like to mention about the gift that you are offering?
Yes. Yeah, I offer people a complimentary Zoom call for anyone who would like to get into the nuts and bolts of this, or to sort of pick my brain, see if their situation is something I've dealt with before, is it something I've seen results with before, and I think it's a very good place to start if you're thinking of looking at this as a natural way to help the body go into repair mode. And you can connect with me through LinkedIn or Facebook, and so Kubra is going to have the connections there underneath. So it's very simple to connect with me. It's very simple then we can arrange a chat and then take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you for this generous offer. And before we wrap it up here, I would like to share with my beloved audience that our body meant to be healthy. We supposed to be pain-free, because for especially fibromyalgia patients, I used to consider myself, it is the normal way having pain in our body or issues. But the fact is the opposite, and our body should be healthy no matter what age we are at, if we believe and if we balance our body chemistry. So if you have any kind of health issues, it's free to talk to Keith and see if his way of working can help you or not. Because even when you breathe in through your nose, you support your system with nitric oxide, and chemically we know how healthy it is to do. And doing it in the way he explained is quite valuable and worth to try and see the results for yourself. Well, we're not recommending any medical things here, but we are talking about the well-being part of it, and I can't wait to try it for myself. And thank you for listening to us. As you know, I will be leaving Keith's links to the show notes, and feel free to reach him out. He's super friendly and talkative and very generous to share his knowledge, his expertise of 17 years in this specific field. And thank you for being today here, Keith, and sharing your information as generous as usual, again, with my audience and with myself. And before we wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to add?
Just for people to realize that they can be in far more control of their health than they realize. They're only missing some information. And if you're being told, oh, take this medication and you'll be on it for life, red flag, it means it's not working. Otherwise, you'd only need it temporarily. So it's like people are put on blood pressure medication. That's just the medication telling the heart not to listen to the body, and the body screaming for more blood flow. So you're making a bigger problem to come to the fore later. But I've seen so many people work their way off the likes of blood pressure medication. In fact, a surgeon rang me one day and asked me to help his brother get off blood pressure medications, and he was off his blood pressure medications in 6 weeks, and his blood pressure perfect.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Keith, and please, everyone, reach out to Keith and have this conversation with him. And thank you for listening to today's episode. And if you find it helpful, or if you feel like or believe that a friend could benefit from this episode or the knowledge of Keith, deliver the information to this person. And as I always say, I love you, and may joy be with you. See you in the next episode.